This is chapter 1, The French Revolution of class 9 NCERT book. And this video is for revision purpose, so you can just go through it before you go for exam. Introduction to the French Revolution. So here we'll be talking about the main event which happened in 1789, from where the whole revolution started. So it occurred in 1789 and specifically on 14th July. A significant event in human history. Swept away existing political institutions, overthrew the French monarchy, aimed for an egalitarian society and responsible government where the people are responsible to form government, to run government. It started from here. That's why this is, we can say, the milestone, or we can say the foundation stone, not milestone, the foundation stone from where the modern world's political system established. So it started with the storming of Bastille. Bastille was actually a prison in France. So it was stormed by some of the people on 14th July 1789 and continued until Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power. So we will read between these two things, two events. One, which is storming of Bastille, and the other is Napoleon's rise in power in France. So first of all, we need to know how actually the French society was divided before the revolution. So this old time period is known as the old regime, divided into three estates: first estate, second estate, and third estate. So if we talk about the first estate, it is where the clergies means the head of the church, and at that time religion was the very important thing, or we can say the most important thing. So all the rules and regulations were made by the clergy, who used to be the head of the churches, and they were exempted from the taxes. Second estate was nobility, in which all the members of ruling family, or the ruler and the ruler were considered as into the nobility group, and they were also exempted from the taxes, and they had certain feudal privileges as well. Next we have third estate, which was it contains most of the population of that country, and in this, the groups which were included, rich and poor both, such as businessmen, merchants, lawyer, peasants, artisan, then landless laborers, and more. So you can see in the picture also the depiction is given. Next, there was struggle to survive. Why? Because population was growing fast, and with that the demand of food was also increasing. Food production couldn't keep up, leading to rising bread prices. So the production was not that good, due to which the prices of bread, which was the basic food, rose. And then low wages widened up the gap between the rich and poor. So salary was also less. Then droughts and hail worsened the conditions. So all these conditions um, made people struggle to survive in France. A growing middle class envisions change. Now, how the change came in the society? So it was all because of the middle class. Middle class means the third estate's rich people. They became the middle class. Let's see how. So peasants revolted against taxes and food scarcity. The middle class emerged, prospered through trade and manufacturing, and it had access to education and new ideas. So whenever some people in a society get educated, they become the change, or they become the reason for the change. Same happened here. So social positions based on merit, not by birth. They opted for merit based position in society, and there were some philosophers like Rousseau, Jean Jacques Rousseau, Montesquieu proposed new forms of government. So let's talk about these thinkers. So first thinker is Charles Montesquieu. He was a nobleman turned lawyer and judge. Then advocated constitutional monarchy. He wanted that there should be a constitution which can limit the power of monarch. Popularized the separation of powers in the government in the spirit of laws. He had written a book, The Spirit of Laws, in which he talked about the separation of power today, as we see in most of the countries, democratic countries, legislature, executive, and judiciary. This concept was given by Charles Montesquieu in his book, The Spirit of Laws. Then we have Francis Arnold Voltaire. Voltaire is also very famous. He emphasized material life over religious focus. So, as we can see, church power is being we can say challenged here. So, criticize church treatment of the poor. Then we have third one, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was the architect of the French Revolution, as he talked about social contracts between human being and the people and the king, or we can say government. He introduced the concept of social contract, believed people had the right to rebel against a ruler who did not fulfill the contract. Then next we have John Locke. He was a political thinker and he wrote a book which was Two Treatises of Government to refute the divine right of monarchs. So he also wanted the power of monarch should be limited or reduced. Next we have how the outbreak of revolution, how it happened. Let's see. So on 5th May 1789, King Louis XVI called for an assembly of the Estates General to discuss proposal for new taxes. So it happened, and before this, when the last time this kind of meeting happened was in 1614, which was almost 150 years ago. So, and it was just to increase the taxes. So you can see how you can understand how people get upset with this thing, because in 150 years nobody talked about their problems, the people's problems and all, and suddenly they are asking for like an increase in the taxes. So the people grew angry here. The Estate General was a political body consisting of representatives from the three estates: clergy, nobility, and the common people, third estate. So we will be talking about how the division of the representatives was done. Let's see. Each estate had one vote, but the first and second estate consisting of the clergy and nobility and had combined 600 representatives, like 300 from church and clergy and 300 from nobility, and both have one vote. Okay, and the third estate had 600 members, representatives, but it has again one vote value. So whatever is the condition, again the third estate will lose. So the outbreak of revolution continues here. The peasants, artisans, and women were excluded from the assembly. So when this meeting happened, General Estates meeting, in that meeting 300 people of clergy and 300 people of nobility were sitting. They were having proper sitting arrangement, and 600 representatives of the third estate, common people, they were standing behind the other two category. So, and also in that 600 there was no representation of women, poor people, and the children. So it was like that. And artisan and peasants also, they were not there in the meeting. New taxes could only be processed if approved by the Estate General, like all three parties majority. And since the clergy and nobility were exempt from the taxes, it was expected that they would approve the king's tax proposal. But it did not happen this time. And then when they denied to accept this tax increase proposal, they gathered in the tennis court of Versailles Palace, about which we are talking, where this general estate meeting happened. So third estate representatives demanded that voting be conducted by the entire assembly, where each member would have one vote. So they wanted each member one vote value. When King Louis XVI rejected this proposal, the third estate representative walked out of the assembly in protest, and then they gathered on 20th June 1789 in the indoor tennis court at Versailles Palace. They declared themselves the National Assembly and board not to disperse until they had drafted a constitution that would limit the powers of the monarch. So, here they had one objective, that they wanted to frame a constitution and they wanted to limit the power of the monarch. And then, during this time period only, what happened? On 14th July 1789, Paris 1 was in turmoil due to a severe winter, a bad harvest, and rising bread prices, which we talked in the first or second slide. Bakers hoarded supplies, causing anger among the population, especially women. So bakers started keeping store of things, but they were not giving it to the people because they wanted to raise the price, and women were getting angry because they had to take care of the family and children. Rumors spread that the army might be ordered to fire upon citizens, and this type of rumors were spread that the king's people will attack on those people, I mean the common people. In response, thousand formed a people's militia, means like a military kind of, and broke into government's building in search of arms and targeted the Bastille, which was a prison, a symbol of the king's power. The Bastille, a dreaded fortress prison, was stormed by protesters and its commander was killed while the prisoners were released. The fortress was subsequently demolished completely. It was demolished, and it was taken as or considered as the beginning of the French Revolution. So France became a constitutional monarchy because after this event, they had already started making their constitution in after tennis court oath, and then in 1791 they completed the constitution, and now the power was divided according to this constitution. Power was divided among the different institutions, making France a constitutional monarchy, and they had separate legislature, executive, and judiciary branches. The Constitution of 1791 vested the power to make laws in the National Assembly. Now they had created, like now we have Parliament, they had created National Assembly, which was indirectly elected. And now, see, election was not the same process as we have today. It also evolved with time. So in the beginning, it was like few people will vote and few will not. So we'll see how it was. The constitution began with the declaration of right of man and citizens. So here we can see that women were excluded, exempted. So not exempted, excluded, establishing natural and inalienable rights, including liberty, property, equality before law. So these rights were given only to the men and citizens, and not to the women. Okay. And then there were more rights, like the declaration emphasized the rights of individual and the sovereignty of the nation. It stated that the law should protect society individual rights, and citizen had the right to participate in forming laws. And today we see that it is now known as universal adult franchise, but at that time it was not that. The voting right was given to certain people with certain conditions. Liberty was defined as the power to do anything not injurious to others, and the law could only forbid actions harmful to society. Every citizen had the right to speak, write, and print freely, with responsibility for abuses determined by law. Taxes were considered essential for public force and administration to be assessed equally on all citizens according to their means. So now the feudal privileges will be removed, and the taxes privileges will be removed, and they will all be giving taxes. Property was deemed a sacred and inviolable right, with just compensation required for public necessity. Then we have this tablet where the declaration of rights for men and citizen given in your book, and then we have certain symbols. Here we can see the symbols. So how these symbols are used during the French Revolution. So the declaration of rights of men and citizen was symbolically represented using various images to convey its principles, making it accessible to largely illiterate population. So at that time literacy was not that common among everyone. So to aware people who were illiterate, they used symbols, and these symbols had certain meanings. Like the broken chain symbolized freedom. Like those who are free, they will be symbolized with broken chain. The bundle of rods represented unity and strength. The eye within a triangle radiating light symbolized knowledge, dispelling ignorance. The scepter symbolized royal power. A snake biting its tail to form a ring symbolized eternity. The red cap symbolized freedom gained from slavery. The colors like blue, white, and red represented the national colors of France. Now, these are the colors of France. National flag. Then we have the winged women personified the law, and the law tablet represented equality under law. This law tablet. And now, after that, what happened when the that constitution was made? Then there was some changes which we will see. But before that, I would like to tell you that the people were divided into two category. One was active citizen, other was passive citizen. So active citizens were those who had voting rights, like they were 25 years old, and they should be the propertied man, like they should have some property, and they must be paying some taxes. So these things they should have, then only they could vote. From this, women, children, and old people and peasants were kept away. So they were those people were known as passive citizen. They were not allowed to vote. Okay, now France abolishes monarchy and becomes a republic. How it happens? Let's see. So despite signing the constitution, King Louis 16 secretly negotiated with the king of Prussia, present time Germany. So they were secretly talking how to like solve this problem, because it can affect other countries' monarch system also. So they were talking, and in April 1792, the assembly declared the war against Prussia and Austria, which was seen as a war of people against monarchy across Europe. And people got to know about it, so they declared a war upon Prussia and Austria. Why Austria? Because Austria was the place where the wife of Louis XVI, who was the king of France, wife was this Marie Antoinette, and she was from Austria. So that's why people were not happy with these two places, Prussia and Austria, because in Austria, the princess was quite like the princess of Austria who became wife of France King Louis XVI. She was quite extravagant. She was paying a lot of money in wasting a lot of money in her expenses. So this way they didn't like, people didn't like them, and they wanted to attack, and they attacked on these two countries at that time. The revolutionary wars led to economic difficulty, losses for the people. Political clubs such as Jacobins played a significant role in rallying people to discuss government policies and plans. So in the society, there were so many clubs working, like some associations. If you have learned about Indian history, modern time history, so there were so many political associations. In the same way, they were also having so many political associations of male and female, and they were known as clubs. So the one club which was quite famous was Jacobins Club, and this is proclamation of the abolition of monarchy, which is depicted through a picture. Now in the summer of in 1792, the Jacobins organized an insurrection due to food shortage and high prices. On August 10th, they stormed the palace of the Tuileries and held the king hostage. Like they, where the king was residing at that time, they attacked on that palace, and then uh, they held the king as hostage. Then elections were held, and on September 21, 1792, the newly elected assembly called the Convention abolished the monarchy and declared France a republic. So from there, republic France became a republic, and the king was abdicated, and monarchy system was abolished. King Louis XVI was put on trial for treason and sentenced to death. He was executed publicly on January 21, 1793 at the Palace de la Concorde. So this was the palace where he was executed, and he was guillotinized by the Jacobin Club members, and the head of the Jacobin Club was Robespierre Maximilien. So we'll be talking about him also in the next slide, like now. So the reign of terror, what was it? After the abdication and execution of the king, the new government was of Jacobins Club, and that government was being headed by Maximilien Robespierre. So the period from 1793 to 94 is known as the Reign of Terror. During this time, Maximilien Robespierre implemented a policy of strict control and punishment. So whoever will talk against the government and who will be anti-nationalist, they all will be punished harshly. So ex-noble clergy, even members of his own party who disagreed with his method, were arrested and imprisoned. Thousands of nobles and individuals were executed by guillotine. Guillotine was a kind of machine which had sharp blade, and people were being beheaded with that machine if they were uh, having any charge of anti-nationalism, or if they were talking about the party and their decisions, against their party and decisions. So Robespierre introduced laws to control prices, closed churches, and sought to regulate various aspects of society. He also abolished slavery at that time, but later on again it was started. However, Robespierre's rule come to an end when he was guillotinized in July 1794, because he was quite rude, or you can say harsh in terms of punishment. So he one day he was also being guillotinized by his club members. Okay, then after his death in 1794, directory rule started in France. How what was it? Let's talk about it. So, following the end of the Reign of Terror, a new constitution was created by an elected convention. So, what is the meaning of convention? Like there were some people uh, who agreed to govern with the, we can say, with the consent of people living in that, citizens of the country. So this constitution established a republican form of government with a legislature and an executive body called the directory. So there were two body, one was legislature, other was executive, and this body was called as directory, and there were 5 members. So political instability during the directory era eventually paved the way for the rise of military dictator Napoleon Bonaparte. And when there were 5 members, they were quite against of each other in some matters, and they were arguing with each other. They had conflicts among themselves, due to which a new person, or we can say military dictator, came into power, whose name was Napoleon Bonaparte. We'll talk about him in last 2 slides, but right now let's talk about women's role in revolution, because we saw that women did not get any right during the revolution. The rights were given only to men and citizens. Let's see how did they get all the rights later. Women in the third estate, who had to work for a living and often lacked access to education or job training, started their own political clubs and newspapers. Around 60 women's clubs emerged in different French cities advocating for women's political rights. Early revolutionary governments introduced some laws to improve women's life, including the creation of state schools. It happened in during the period of Jacobin clubs period. It happened. Compulsory education for girls, the right to choose marriage partners, and the ability to seek divorce. Or these was given. All these rights were given to women in that Jacobin clubs time period. Okay, however, during the Reign of Terror, women's clubs were closed and the political activities were banned. These things were banned during Jacobin clubs ruling period, or we can say governing period. The fight for women's suffrage continued through an international suffrage movement and resulted in French women gaining the right to vote in 1946. So they continued for demand getting voting rights. It continued till 1946, and in 1946 they got voting rights. So we should be proud that our country when it got freedom, it brought the equal rights for everyone. For even for women, we have given the same right. But sad that today, even today, we are not equal in terms of gender or all these criteria. Okay, now we will talk about slavery, which was a bad practice at that time. How it ended finally, let's talk about it. So, slavery was widespread in European colonies in the Caribbean and the Americas, primarily on plantations producing sugar, coffee, indigo, and tobacco. So, if we talk about slavery, it was quite common at that time. Reason was that industrialization process in which they wanted more and more production. So that time, wherever there was plantation happening, in 8th class you learned about plantation. It is a kind of commercial agriculture, commercial farming, in which they grow cash crop and they need a lot of cheap labor. So for that purpose they wanted slaves. So they used to do trade, and there was a trade triangle at that time between among America, of Africa and Europe. So they were taking slaves from Africa and America. It was happening. The Constituent Assembly in France debated the issue in October 1790 with two opposing parties, one supporting planters' interest and the other advocating the rights of slaves. So, when the constitution was being framed, as we see, ruling party and opposition, they also fought. One was fighting for the rights of planters who used to keep slaves, and other side for from the side of slaves. But while the outcome did not immediately end slavery, it drew attention to the condition of slaves and sowed seeds for future division. And on February 4, 1794, the convention finally abolished. Okay, it was not Jacobin club, but it was the convention, the National Assembly, which framed the directory rule. At that time it happened that for some time slavery was ended, and then later Napoleon revoked it in 1802, 1804. Slavery was fully abolished in the French colonies in 1848. So it happened at the end, like when, even when the Napoleon Bonaparte was killed, after that also, after some 30 years, it happened, 30 to 34 years. The summer of like how it impacted the revolution, how it impacted the everyday life. So summer of 1789 saw significant changes in the lives of men, women, and um, children in France. How it happened? So censorship was abolished. So we know censorship is something that it is kind of restriction on the freedom of speech and expression, which is applied on the newspaper and medium of communication, mass communication. So it was when it was abolished, the censorship on governments, like earlier when there was monarchy system. So obviously monarch will never want ki any newspaper or any such mass communication medium print something which is against the king. So censorship was there. But when revolution happened and then censorship was removed, everybody got the rights, which kind of right? Freedom of speech and expression. So it became their natural right, but only for men and citizen. Freedom of press allowed diverse views to be expressed, and cultural activities like plays, songs, and festive processions attracted large crowds. So this kind of activities started happening, and people got awareness. And in the same way, in India also it happened. So if you remember the reformers time period, women caste reform, we learn. So newspaper started impacting people, and during the time period of spread of nationalism, these mass media or the medium of communication helped a lot. So finally comes to the conclusion, the rise and fall of Napoleon. So 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte declared himself Emperor of France after the directory rule ends, and then he brings certain changes. Is also known as the modernizer of Europe. He declared himself as modernizer of Europe because he brought certain changes. And when he became the dictator of France, he appointed all his relatives and family members in the government because he used to trust them only. Napoleon introduced various laws. How he was known as a modernizer? He was known as a modernizer because he introduced various laws, including protection of private property and uniform system of weights and measures, so that uniformity can be maintained and um, uh, trade and like business can be improved. So initially he was seen as a liberator, who used to give freedom to everyone, and who used to work for the country. But soon his armies were viewed as invader across Europe. Later they started invading other countries, attacking other countries. So Europe's other countries seen him as a threat. So Napoleon's reign marked as a significant chapter in the French history, and with its rise and eventual fall. So how his fall happened? Because some of the countries of uh, Europe, they attacked on him in 1815 in the Battle of Waterloo. So then he was killed. So this way we finish the chapter, but it continues because, as we know, when France sneezes, the whole Europe catches cold. So we'll continue in the next chapter about the same thing, the same learnings, how it impacted other countries of France like Russia, other countries of Europe like Russia. So we'll talk in the next video. For that time, thank you.